Men wanted to be him. Women wanted to be with him. This blonde, good-looking guy with a raspy voice changed a lot of lives. And no, I am not talking about myself. I am talking about the lead singer of Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. A young artist who became more popular by the day, even if it was against his own wishes. His future seemed bright, with a child whom he loved dearly and a successful band. But then came April 8, 1994, the day his body was found. According to the autopsy, Kurt took his own life by shooting himself with a shotgun in the head. But was it really suicide? Not everyone is convinced. Did Courtney Love have something to do with it? Was he killed? Is he still alive? Aliens? Illuminati? Let's take a deep dive in the conspiracy theories surrounding the unfortunate death of Kurt Cobain in this episode of Tenebris Fabulas. But before we get into conspiracy theories, let's first find out who Kurt Cobain was and what made him famous. On February 20th, 1967, Kurt Donald Cobain was born in Aberdeen, in Washington. He was born to a 19-year-old waitress Wendy and a 21-year-old auto mechanic Donald. They were married for less than 2 years and he eloped when they realized that she was pregnant. A little over 3 years later, Kurt's younger sister was born. Her name was Kimberly. Seeing that his parents were fairly young, they didn't have a lot of money to spend. His mother was a waitress, his father was an auto mechanic, and all in all they were struggling to stay afloat financially. On March 15, 1976, his happy childhood came to an end. This was the day that his parents split up. Before this, they had a fairly fun childhood. They went on summer vacations, they had winter trips. But it all changes when, after increasing fights over money, Wendy informs Don that she wanted a divorce. Wendy went on to inform her children what was happening, and Don stayed a bit in denial. He didn't want to face the reality of the split up, even for the months or even years to come. And as an energetic 9-year-old, this came as a big blow, and it was obvious that he was less happy after this whole split up, according to stories from his childhood at least. On June 28, 1979, Cobain's mother, Wendy, gave full custody of Kurt to his father, Donald. You know, they were having quarrels with one another and they shoved him around from place to place like he was some kind of spoiled goods. Donald had a new family, even though he promised Kurt that he wouldn't remarry after splitting from his mother. And when he ends up in an abusive relationship, Cobain even witnessed her getting into a hospital with a broken arm, all from her new husband. But Wendy refused to press charges against her husband. And at this point, Cobain became more and more insolent towards adults. All this trauma as a young child could have led to his early start with drugs. According to interviews, he smoked marijuana for the first time when he was only 13. Now, even for me, as someone from the Netherlands, this is fairly young to start smoking marijuana. These kind of early starts with drugs and alcohol could have led to the addiction he had later on in his life. In February 1981, he got to choose between a used guitar or a bike. Well, we all know which choice he made. So for his 14th birthday, he got a used acoustic guitar from his uncle. His whole childhood was filled with music. He already played the piano, he already sang in school and, for his family and stuff. And this was when he started to experiment with playing the guitar. And when he was 14, he also started to record his first attempt at a song, just to say. He recorded and cut his first recording in his aunt's house, but it's safe to say that this wasn't a award-winning song. He was described as a normal teenager, normal in the way of teenagers in the 1980s. You know, he played music, listened to music, smoked marijuana, had a messy room, and it seemed that all his troubles from his youth, being passed around from parent to parent, didn't have a big of an effect on him. Then came March 1987. This was Nirvana's first semi-public gig. Cobain was 20 years old at this time, and they performed at a house party. They played a couple of Led Zeppelin covers and jammed a bit around, and the host of the party played on the second guitar, the rhythm guitar. It was not exactly what Kurt Cobain envisioned to be his first gig, but every gig is a gig at this stage in his career. And had Cobain declined to go to this party, to perform at this party, you would never know what kind of a success Nirvana would have been like it is now. Back then there were a lot of people who started making music but never got out and performed. And, well, we never know what kind of great bands we would have missed by people who were too shy to perform for the first time. Only 2 years later, on February 1989, Nirvana had their first United States tour, after only 39 gigs under the belts, and this was really the start of Nirvana's claim to fame, so to say. In June 1989, they released their first album called Bleach. They already had around 30 gigs, including the tour around America. This was all still low budget recording, and the cover photo was taken by a friend, Everything was still low budget, even though they had a couple of gigs. They still weren't in the big money, so to say. And in October 1989, they had the first European tour. They started in the United Kingdom and had 9 other countries where they would perform. And in total they had 39 dates, so 39 performances. And they even played 2 days after the DDR government decided that they would allow people to freely cross the Berlin Wall. So they also performed at a big historical moment. Still with only 2.5 years being together as a band, it's a big accomplishment. Then came January 1990. For the first time, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love locked eyes with each other. This was in a small nightclub in Portland. Cobain was there for a Nirvana gig, and Courtney had come with a friend who was dating a member of the opening band. Courtney Love saw Kurt Cobain walk by only a few minutes before his band was set to appear on stage. And within 13 seconds they were wrestling on the floor, according to the stories. This was the Kurt Cobain's idea of flirting, and apparently it worked because, they had a long relationship after this. On November 1990, Cobain first experimented with heroin. This is according to his diary, that he tried heroin for the first time in the late 80s. It's still not clear whether this was really his first time trying it, or that he even tried it all. His friend disputed this because he said Cobain was afraid of needles and heroin wasn't even available then in Aberdeen. He did dabble with Persodan, which is a kind of opioid. A couple of years before this, he even scolded a friend of him who wanted to try heroin, saying, "Why do you want to kill yourself?" or "Why do you want to die so badly?" He had a stance against heroin, and later on, 3 years later, according to himself, he started using it. So it's a bit of a contradiction in this, but according to his diary, this is the first time he started to try using heroin. May 17th, 1991. This was the second time Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain met each other. At 3 a.m. Cobain called Courtney Love and they talked for over an hour. He mostly listened, and afterwards Cobain couldn't stop talking about Courtney Love to his friends, saying that he met the coolest girl in the world. After this interaction, meeting each other again and calling each other afterwards, it will be 5 more months before the two meet again. September 1991, their breakthrough album Nevermind is released. And I think everyone knows this album. It's the one with the cover where the baby is underwater, swimming towards money. And in January 1992, this Nevermind replaces Michael Jackson's album Dangerous at the #1 Billboard 200 chart. Meanwhile, Kurt Cobain was still effectively homeless, and he was financially completely broke. So you can see the contradiction between his success and his financial gain. In October 1991, Cobain and Courtney Love meet each other again. This was 5 months after their last interaction. They meet backstage after a Nirvana gig in Chicago Cabaret Metro. And this is the night where they got intimate, if you know what I mean. And after this moment, they become inseparable. And, they were completely smitten with each other, because in February 1992, they already got married. They got hitched on Hawaii, and according to themselves, they weren't completely sober. I'm not sure whether they mean they were drinking heavily or that they were using, drugs, because Courtney Love is also infamous for using a lot of heroin back in her day. On August 18th, 1992, Frances Bean Cobain was born. This was the child of Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love, of course. And according to a lot of eyewitness statements, he fell completely in love with his daughter. But this was also the period where the trouble began. In a Vanity Fair's article, Courtney Love, told some weird stories. She talked a lot about using drugs with Cobain, even that she used drugs when she was pregnant with her child. They were just shooting up, using pills, heroin. You know, Kurt Cobain was throwing up on people inside the cab. They were just both out of it for a good couple of months. This article led to some punishment. They weren't allowed to be alone with their child for 1 month, just because, people didn't trust them with all the use of their drugs and stuff. So as you can see, when these two came together, they became a perfect storm of heroin use, making music, making love, and just more drugs. And this perfect storm was bound to end badly. In May 1993, there was the first so-called suicide attempt of Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain injected, $30 to $40 worth of heroin. Now, as the amateur that I am, I have no idea what that kind of money buys you in heroin kind of talk. But I can assume that it's too much, just to say. And with this heroin in the system, he started to drive home with Courtney Love in the car. He started to shake, became flushed, delirious, and talked incoherently. And as the brilliant mind that Courtney Love is, she decided to inject Kurt Cobain with even more drugs, just to be sure, you know. Drugs cancelled out other drugs, so why not put some more drugs in this system, I think. After injecting him with more drugs, she finally called 911. After this incident, Courtney Love claimed that she saved Cobain's life. She was not arrested for possession or even injecting illegal drugs in an unconscious body, just to say. In July 1993, it became more clear why Kurt Cobain was using all these drugs. It turns out that he was suffering from a lot of stomach pain. This was caused due to a pinched nerve, which in itself brought a curved spine, you know, scoliosis. He used these drugs to ease the pain that he was constantly in. But instead of going to doctors and find out what he was suffering, he decided to self-administrate these illegal drugs. After his diagnosis, he got medication from a real doctor, and he found out he could be furtherly pain-free without having to rely on heroin or other illegal substances. He called it a miracle. He finally found out why he was suffering all these years, and he could be cured by just legal medication that didn't brought that much danger with it. This was also when he started his road to recovery. He started with his medication and wanted to stop with the illegal drugs. Then came September 1993, their new album In Utero is released. Then came March 1994. Here he got his so-called Rome overdose. Courtney Love said that she woke up around 3 to 4 a.m. to find Kurt Cobain unconscious on the floor and bleeding from his nose. However, there was no ambulance called until 6 a.m. So 3 or 4 hours were just sitting around figuring out why he was, not responding to Courtney Love, I think. Which is just, weird to have someone laying on the floor bleeding and not think to get any help for 3 hours. It turned out that Kurt Cobain had taken champagne laced with rohypnol. Rohypnol is some kind of date rape drug. You know, this is a drug that is odorless and tasteless, so it could be mixed in with the alcohol, with the champagne, and Kurt Cobain will be completely incapacitated. Anyone could have mixed this into his alcohol without him knowing it. So it's not sure whether he overdosed himself or that someone slipped him this drugs and wanted to take advantage of him. Luckily, 20 hours later, he woke up in the hospital out of a coma, and the first thing he wanted was a milkshake. And the first thing he said to Courtney Love was, the always lovely "fuck off." He wrote this on a piece of paper and gave it to Courtney Love. And before Kurt Cobain died, this incident was not registered as a suicide attempt. Only after his suicide, they saw the connection between this incident and his eventual death. Kurt Cobain himself insisted it was not a suicide attempt. He only wanted to take all of his and Courtney's money, and he wanted to run away and disappear. Probably not only because of his bad relationship with Courtney Love, but also because, his later statements that he didn't want to be this famous. He just wanted to have a band, make music, but not have all the commotion around it. He himself had no idea what happened to him that night. Rohypnol is known to cause amnesia, but it could also have been that someone slipped in this drug. So it's not sure whether he administered it himself or that he was, drugged. In March 1994, police confiscated Cobain's guns. Courtney Love called 911, claiming that Cobain was suicidal, and locked himself inside a room with a gun. Police came and decided that they would take all the guns away, and they also found some pills, which they also took with him. Cobain himself denies being suicidal and explained that he locked himself in the room simply to be left alone. He said that his wife, Courtney Love, was out of control and was verbally abusive towards him. So he just wanted to be safe from his wife. Later on, Courtney Love admits to the police that Cobain wasn't in fact suicidal and that she never actually saw him with a gun in the first place. So she was just making up a story to get Cobain out of the room, I guess, so she could continue to berate him or something. In March, Cobain went to a rehab facility to start a detox, but after 3 days he already left the detox facility. On April 2nd, the nanny sees Kurt Cobain. Courtney Love closes all Cobain's credit cards. He ran away from the detox center, so the nanny seeing Cobain was a surprise, and Courtney Love started closing all his credit cards. I'm not sure why. I think the intention was to get him back to the detox facility, but closing his credit cards isn't the best way to go about it, in my opinion. Especially for a famous person. If he wants, he could get money everywhere, I would think. April 3rd, Courtney Love hires a private investigator to find Cobain. This is private investigator Grant. Courtney Love tells him that she doesn't know where Cobain might be. Yet, when he called SPD early this morning, she tells police Cobain has flown to Seattle. So she did know where he was, but didn't want to tell the private investigator where he was for some reason, even though she hired him to find Kurt Cobain. Although it's a bit of a weird story how Courtney Love goes about all these things. She also told the Seattle Police Department that he bought a shotgun and that he is suicidal. No one in the detox facility thought that Kurt Cobain was suicidal. One counselor even said that Cobain was close to admitting that he had an addiction problem, and maybe Cobain felt that he had the situation under control. He had been through detox before, so he knew all the steps and how to get rid of it. But it was never his best suit to continue with not using drugs. It was also clear that Courtney Love knew that Cobain wanted out of the marriage between, him and her. Just a couple of weeks before he went into rehab and escaped and gone missing, she asked one of her attorneys to get the meanest, most vicious divorce lawyer. In the days before his death, it wasn't obvious that he was suicidal. He was seen in a dive bar, just having a meal, appearing normal. He declined the invitation to join some girls' party, which I could understand if you're married and stuff. On Monday, April 4th, Courtney Love calls to report Cobain missing. She did this by posing as Cobain's mother to file a missing persons report. She also suggested that they talk to a detective Terry. The question was why she would suggest this. Has Terry inside information about where Cobain usually obtains drugs or something? If so, wasn't this detective breaking the law by not apprehending a known offender? And of course for sharing this kind of information with Courtney Love. But that's all speculation. It's just a weird detail that she would advise the cops to speak to Detective Terry. On April 6th, two people claim that they have spoken to Kurt Cobain, which is weird because according to the police report he died on April the 5th. So so it would have been a miracle to talk to him on April 6th, unless he didn't die. But two people came forward saying that they spoke to him on April 6th. April 7, Courtney Love stages her own suicide attempt. Courtney Love was found in a hotel room with her ex-boyfriend, guitarist Eric Erlandson. She was taken to the hospital and already released 2.5 hours later. She was immediately arrested, but also released 3 hours later by posting a bill of $10,000. She then went on to check into the same detox center that Kurt Cobain was in, which she escaped out of. And she left the next day already. So this was just a weird incident with Courtney Love, doing some weird stuff with her ex-boyfriend while her husband is missing. Later on, the attorney said that she had an allergic reaction to some Xanax, and that's why she was hospitalized and stuff, but it's not sure what really happened in that hotel room. Friday, April 8th, Kurt Cobain's body was found when an electrician is called in to install a new security system. His body was found 3 days after he killed himself. He was in a room above the greenhouse or the garage. And according to eyewitness statements, it wasn't easy to look into this room where he was laying in. So an electrician who wanted to install these security systems climbed over a ladder and saw Kurt Cobain lying on the floor. And that's when he called the police, and Kurt Cobain's body was eventually found. On April 14, Kurt Cobain's body is cremated. This was against his own wishes. You know, he never expressed the desire to be cremated in the first place. And as a potentially murder case, it is fairly quick to be cremated 6 days after your body has been found. And Kurt Cobain is pretty stubborn with details, so he would have put it on paper what he wanted to do with his body when he was found. In his room with his body, they found a heroin kit. This was a small box with spoons, lighters, needles, and things to strap off their arm. There were no needles found in his body. Next to his body was a shotgun, which he used to kill himself. The shotgun was later tested for fingerprints, and there were no fingerprints found on the shotgun. Strangely, there were no fingerprints found on anything, not the heroin kit, not the shotgun. It looked like everything was wiped clean, so to speak. There was also a note found. There are a lot of speculation about this note. In the first part of the note, in his handwriting, there were talk about love, empathy. He talks about his daughter, about his wife, things that made him sad, things that made him happy. You know, he's thanking people. And then at the bottom of the page, there are a couple of extra lines, which do not like the same handwriting as it is on the top of the page. You know, these other lines say, "Please keep going, Courtney, for Frances, for her life, which will be so much happier without me. I love you, I love you." Well, words that were completely contradicting the whole relationship he was having with his wife at that period of time. And lastly, we've also found some film rolls. It took a lot of years before these rolls were developed. Due to deterioration, the pictures now have a green tint. So this is the story of Kurt Cobain from his birth to his death. And now it's time to jump into the conspiracies. So the first conspiracy is that Courtney Love killed Kurt Cobain. After his overdose or his, being drugged in Rome, Kurt made up his mind that he wanted to divorce Courtney Love. A lot of people already claimed that Courtney Love was pretty, nuts, just to say it nicely. There were rumors that she was cheating on him and yelling at him, physically attacking him and stuff. So it was time for Kurt Cobain to leave Courtney Love and get on with his life and start to be happier, you know. It was clear that he was on some kind of road to, getting rid of drugs, making life happier. He had his daughter whom he loved a lot. It was time to get rid of this last terrible thing by his side, just so he could keep going with his life. But of course, Courtney did not agree with this. She went to his lake house in Washington, and she finished what she had started in Rome, because she also drugged him in Rome. This whole overdoses was her fault. She administered him with heroin, probably willingly at that moment, because he was going through a rough time. She was going through a rough time, so maybe she said so, hey, let's take some heroin together. And when he started to pass out, or at least lay back, became relaxed, and couldn't put up a fight anymore, she got the shotgun, put it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger. Afterwards, she wiped the fingerprints clean and made up the story that she was somewhere else. Blah blah blah. She's innocent. It couldn't have been me. She added the last couple of lines in the suicide note just to make it look like he killed himself for Courtney Love and her daughter, and that he wanted to let her keep on living, be happy, and that he did this for her and his daughter. That's conspiracy number one. Courtney Love was the killer. Probably for money, for fame, whatever. She just didn't want to leave Kurt Cobain, and she decided, if I can't have him, no one can. And for conspiracy number two, we won't deviate much from this, from conspiracy number one. Courtney Love hired someone to kill Kurt Cobain. Seeing that she was that one day in a drug rehab facility, she wasn't able to kill him, so she wanted to hire someone. So who would she have hired? Later on in a documentary, Eldon Eldus Hockey, he is a singer of the Seattle band The Mentors, claimed that Courtney Love approached him, saying that she would pay him $50,000 if he killed Kurt Cobain. A big claim. If this is true, it's very suspicious. He himself said that he did not take her up on this offer, but said that he referred her to a friend of his. Whether this statement was true or false is still not sure, because 2 days after filming the documentary in which he made this confession, Hoke was run over by a train in Riverside, which is also a big coincidence, just to say the least. Not only a lot of people get run over by trains, especially when after 2 days after they confessed being asked to kill one of the most popular people in America at that time. So not only is there a conspiracy that Courtney Love wanted to hire Hoke to kill Kurt Cobain, but there's also a conspiracy that after this documentary, she wanted Hoke out of the picture. Maybe she asked the same person she asked to kill Kurt Cobain to kill Hoke as well. So these are the conspiracies that Courtney Love wanted to kill Kurt Cobain. Seeing the relationship, it isn't that kind of a weird jump to this conclusion. They were constantly fighting. There was talk about divorce, possibly a first suicide attempt made possible by Courtney Love. Another reason why people do not believe that he killed himself is because he had a triple dose of heroin in his system. This amount of heroin would make it impossible for him to pick up a shotgun, put it in his mouth, and blow his own head off. So these are also things that say, yeah, because of the note, no fingerprints on the shotgun, all this heroin in his system, it all points to someone being there in the room with him and killing him. And that's why they point their finger to Courtney Love, either doing it herself or hiring someone. Theory number 3. He isn't dead at all. Some people think that Kurt Cobain is still alive. Some say that he is still performing. In 2012 he emerged as a singer on a Peruvian talent show, Yo Soy, named Ramiro Saavedra. Only problem is he does not look 40 years old. So the only resemblance I can see is the long blonde hair. Some say that he is River Cuomo from the band Weezer. When he killed himself because of all the fame he didn't want, the best next logical thing to do is become famous again, only under another name with another band or something. So that's something that a lot of people think. Last thing is indeed that he did not kill himself, that he staged his suicide. There's only one picture available from his body. It's from a outside shot where you can see his leg through the door. And even after his body has been taken out of the house, there are no other pictures or no evidence of his body, according to a lot of people. So according to them, he faked his own death. He's probably living in a mansion with Tupac and Elvis Presley and every other musician that died under suspicious circumstances. And there are a couple of variations on this story, but the main thing is that he is still alive and hiding out somewhere or acting out as someone else. And next up, aliens. Kurt Cobain was kidnapped by aliens. A Seattle woman who says that she regularly visits another planet named Terra Prime says that she has seen Kurt there. She said that they let him visit his hometown Seattle from time to time for inspiration to write his songs. He is looking kind of pale, but you would expect that from being stuck on an alien spacecraft. Kurt said to her that another faction of aliens has kidnapped Elvis, the rock and roll legend. Elvis and Kurt have managed to talk a lot. Even they made some jam sessions together. They are now on a first-name basis, according to this woman. I think the aliens were just jealous of our musicians, so they started to kidnap a couple of them to perform private concerts for them in their spacecrafts. Conspiracy number 4 is the CIA. Of course, the CIA hated Kurt Cobain. According to a conspiracy theorist named John Potash, the government was behind the abduction of Kurt Cobain so they could promote his anarchist views on drugs use amongst America's youth. They didn't like it when he started to get sober, started to get clean, so they stepped in and cleaned all the mess up. Famously, the CIA was behind a lot of conspiracy theories. For example, they are the ones who provided drugs to America. And wanted to get the youth hooked to heroin and stuff like that, so they could profit from it. According to John Patosh, Evidence suggests that, unknown to Cobain, the United States intelligence used him to promote heroin use. This is similar to the way US intelligence and media assets helped promote acid in the 1960s. Of course, there is suppressed evidence indicating that the United States intelligence helped orchestrate Cobain's murder due to his anti-materialistic, radicalist, leftist politics, along with his implicit threat to promote sobriety when he stopped using drugs. So when he started to get sober, they stepped in, took him out of the picture, and probably promoted some other musician, just to keep those younglings hooked on drugs. Conspiracy number 5 ties in with another conspiracy. Many people believe that Kurt Cobain was a successful patient of the MK Ultra project. MK Ultra was a project which is proven true. It was a conspiracy back in the day, but later on, by documents being released to the public, it was proved true that the CIA tried to elevate the minds of people, try to control people's minds. Simply put, I will probably make a whole episode about this project. They used LSD and other kind of drugs to manipulate people, their thoughts, their behavior, and that way they were able to mind control certain people. Now, people are saying that Kurt Cobain is one of the successful patients. Many theorize that Courtney was already being programmed when she was just a little girl, and when she brought Kurt Cobain into the family, she could promote their specific platform to the youth of America. So Courtney Love was first programmed, made sure she got Kurt Cobain into the family, and then he was programmed so they could put messages out towards the youth, probably with the same agenda as the pushing drugs agenda. Conspiracy number 6 is a conspiracy you see with every conspiracy, I would think. It's, of course, the Illuminati. His death is clearly a part of some huge Illuminati conspiracy. According to Fred Kelso, a former orderly at the Exodus Recovery Center in Los Angeles, the recovery center where he stayed for 3 days just before his death, he and Kurt had many conversations where it was clear the Nirvana singer was afraid of his life. He said that they were trying to control his music and that they were forced into this world that controlled everything and nobody knows it. This sounds immediately like the Illuminati, bigger, higher force trying to make a new world order, controlling people in the shadows. So only because this guy Fred Kelso told some people that Kurt Cobain said that he was afraid for his life, this whole conspiracy got based around this statement. And I think there are lots more of conspiracies, There are people making up their own mind. Some people suggest that there's evidence that points towards the guilt of some people. For example, Courtney Love or the guy she tried to hire. It's fair to say that there are some unanswered questions in this case. Why were there no fingerprints? Why did he have such a high dose heroin in his system and still kill himself? Why is his body barely searched for evidence? It all seemed like sloppy work, which makes great base for a conspiracy. Now, I am not saying that there is more going on with the death of Kurt Cobain, but I do have to agree that there are some suspicious circumstances. And I think that a good investigation would be helpful in this case. Figuring out whether the handwriting on the paper is different from the other things he wrote. Eyewitness statements, fingerprints, everything could be investigated, should have been investigated, but never happened. So I think there could be more going on, but I'm no expert. I don't know. I just read the conspiracies and laugh about them. So I'm curious what you think. What do you think happened to Kurt Cobain? Was it a suicide? Was it murder? Did someone kidnap him? Did aliens kidnap him? Was the CIA behind it all? Let me know. I would love to hear your opinion about this. This is the episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a comment. Tell me how this is going, and if you could rate me or give me a like or whatever is possible on your on the device you're listening on. It's available on multiple platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. If you could reach out to me and give me a comment or like, it could help this could help this podcast, and it would and I will be able to justify putting more time in these kind of stories. So thanks for listening. If you're not already following me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter @tenebrisfabulas. Here I will post updates about the stories I'm going to do. Ask for your opinion, and I'm trying to get in touch with the people listening to this podcast. So follow me, and I will see you in the next episode. Stay curious and stay safe.